On today's Locked On Jayhawks, previewing KU's big exhibition game on the road against the Arkansas Razorbacks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every show. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on our YouTube page. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we are going to be talking KU Arkansas in the big exhibition game that's happening in Fayetteville, which is obviously a game for charity to make this an exhibition game that is televised, all that sort of stuff. So we'll get into the Arkansas scouting report, at least what it should be on paper, and some of the previews for them, matchups of the game, players to watch on today's episode of the show, which is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So KU Arkansas, it is Friday night at 8 o'clock in Fayetteville, Arkansas on the SEC Network. It is a game that is going to be for charity. I believe that it is CareSource, which is a nonprofit that began as a managed healthcare plan, according to Google, serving Medicaid members in Ohio. Today, it provides public healthcare programs, including Medicaid, Medicare, and Marketplace. Okay, so not entirely sure everything it does, but I don't know. Charity, good. Okay. What are some other headlines coming into this game? Well, obviously it's Bill Self versus John Calipari. It's new digs for John Calipari with this game taking place for him in Arkansas. And what a way it would be for, even though this game doesn't count, what a way for him to endear himself to the fan base if they pull out a win in this game, right? Because as much as it doesn't count to the record, and I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, like, perception wise and what you saw is going to matter a little bit there, right? Like, were you happy after the KU game that they lost to Illinois? Probably not. So new opportunity for him, but there have been plenty of these matchups between Bill Self and John Calipari. You think about the Big 12 SEC challenges throughout the years. You think about the Champions Classics throughout the years. You think about the NCAA tournament meetings, the national title meetings in 2008 and 2012 between these coaches. So lots of history between two of the most accomplished coaches that are still going in college basketball right now. Another big storyline coming into this game, as I'm recording right now, Hunter Dickinson, it was said by Bill Self after late night in the fog that he was, day-to-day with kind of a minor injury. It doesn't sound like it's going to be anything that causes issues. And, are you better off just not playing Hunter in this game to where, hey, if you lose the game, you don't have to worry about being like, oh no, are we as good as we think we are? You just be like, oh yeah, Hunter was out. And then it gives you more reps, more opportunities for Flory to play in a game like this. But no, you'd obviously rather have him as you try to figure out your rotations. You try to figure out your starting lineups. Obviously he'll be in the starting lineup, but you try to figure out how everybody's playing off each other, how everybody is playing off the key players, how this lineup fits or how this player fits playing next to Hunter Dickinson. So it behooves you to have those practice and have those reps in a game like this against another good opponent with Hunter Dickinson in there to kind of have a better idea of some of that stuff. When you look at the Arkansas scouting report, they're ranked 35th coming into the year on Bart Torvik, where they are 32nd on offense, 51st on defense. On KenPom, they are 25th coming into the year, 37th on offense, 22nd on defense. The Blue Ribbon preseason college basketball magazine has them 15th. And then in the AP poll, Arkansas comes in at 16th in the preseason. So wide range between 15th and 35th over those four. For what it's worth, I tend to like some of the computer stuff, but I think in this case, I like the human side of it a little bit more. I think the 15th, 16th is a better indication of what this Arkansas team is. Like, it's going to be hard for KenPom, for Bart Torvik, for the computer sites to fully grasp, hey, John Calipari coming over, all the players he brings over, the transfers, this and that, like the brand new roster. It's going to be hard to have a metric version of that before the season starts and have an accurate view of that. I do view them as, I think that's about right, top 20 team in the country, and that's kind of where they are there. So I think those ones make more sense in terms of at least how, maybe I'm valuing them coming into the season. But it's kind of pointless bringing up any stats from last year's team because it's a new head coach and there's one returning player on the roster. So I could go back and tell you that Arkansas did this well or did this poorly last season. None of it matters because it's not at all the same team. Here's what I know based on who they have. John L. Davis, he was a stud at Florida Atlantic, averaged 18 a game last season, 48% from the floor, 41% from three. Year prior, he was the best player on Florida Atlantic the last couple of years, but he was the best player on a Final Four team, when you put it that way, 2 years ago for Florida Atlantic, and was an All-American candidate last season as well as will be this season for Arkansas. So you start really well there. DJ Wagner is a transfer from Kentucky. He was a former top 5 recruit in the country. Typically those guys who come back for year 2 find some success. So I would expect DJ Wagner is going to have a good second year. He went for about 10 a game last season. So, it's not like he was just completely or just had a horrible season, still 10 a game. The efficiency was a bit low for him, and he only had 0 points in the NCAA tournament loss. Those weren't great, but he had to deal with some injury stuff. I think it was an ankle injury he was dealing with over the course of the season. So he gets healthier from that. Year 2, I would imagine he's going to be a good player this year for Arkansas. So that's a good backcourt. Then you got to do Thiero. He's another transfer over from Kentucky. Had kind of a wild game against KU in the Champions Classic. He hit some big shots, had a good offensive game, 6'8", super athletic, high energy wing who can shoot it a bit at times, but hasn't been asked to do it much, doesn't have high volume there, but he's been inconsistent. And then in that game, he was asked to play the small ball 5 because if you remember, like all the Kentucky big men were hurt and he was just getting destroyed on the defensive end of the court. Well, he's going to be more of a 3-4 for what this team has this year. So won't have to defend in the paint this time around, but he's a talented player. Trayvon Brazile, he's a kind of athletic stretch 4, stretch 5 who can really shoot the basketball and is a pretty good athlete. He's the lone returning player for Arkansas. But there's a quote in Blue Ribbon, that preseason college basketball preview, about John Calipari wanting him to be less of a kind of stretch catch and shoot guy and more of kind of a catch and attack or attack off the dribble. So if he ends up being the starting 4, he ends up being the starting 5. Does that mean he's taking less threes? Does that mean they have less shooting on the court? Is that, conducive? Is that best for his game? I don't know. We haven't totally seen that yet. So that'll become interesting. Jonas Idu, another transfer they brought in. He was that stud interior center defender for Tennessee that helped them have, these top 5, top 10 defenses over the past couple of years. KU's seen him a couple times. In fact, they saw Jonas Idu in the Maui Invitational. And then I would imagine backing up Idu is going to be Avicic, who is the transfer from Kentucky, who is like the 7'2", pretty skilled center. So they have a lot of size, right? You can start a 6'10" Brazile next to Jonas Idu or, next to Avicic or whatever it is. And then you have one of those other guys coming off the bench. And then if Thiero's playing the 3 at 6'8", he'll probably also play some 4. Like they have good size down low. And then you had a freshman class of 4 players for Arkansas, 3 of whom are top 30 commits in the country, led by Boogie Fland. He is the number 1 point guard according to Rivals and On 3. Interestingly enough, though, if you're looking at 24/7 Sports, none of their players are top 20 in the country, which I'd be curious the last time that John Calipari had that happen where he didn't have a single top 20 player. But Boogie Fland might end up being like a top 20 freshman this year. We'll see. He's got those other 2 guards with Davis and Wagner in front of him. We'll see how that limits his playing time and his role. Carter Knox, he could end up starting. You could have Adu Thiero coming off the bench, or you could have Brazile coming off the bench and Thiero starts at the 4 and Carter Knox starts at the 3 because he is kind of a powerful scoring wing that could start along the wing for them. So it's a lot of star power overall when you look at like Nelly Davis as possibly being an All-American. When I look at DJ Wagner probably having a big jump this year, right? I mean, Brazile and Idu and Thiero have certainly potential, as do the freshmen, to be pretty big impact players. Now, will all of them hit at once? No, it typically doesn't work that way. But, point being, this is a team that has that star power and has players that can make a lot of things happen. How well does it all fit, especially this early in the year? Like, that's always the question, it seems like, with John Calipari teams. This is a much older John Calipari team, and the guys who are going to be playing the big roles are older players, so maybe it'll have an easier time coming along. But if you're Kansas, maybe this is the right time to kind of play him, even though, again, the game doesn't really count. My big question on paper when I'm looking at this Arkansas roster is going through all those guys, do they have enough shooting? Right, that's been a common question for a lot of past John Calipari teams. Like, I have no doubt in my mind, John L. Davis, like, he's going to be able to shoot the basketball. He's a really good shooter of the basketball. Trayvon Brazile is an efficient shooter of the basketball, but how many is he going to take per game? It typically been 2 or 3 per game for Brazile. And if John Calipari, you go back to that quote, if he's going to be mitigating that a bit, just go down to 1 or 2 a game. Like Adu Thiero has potential there, but he's only taken 31 attempts in 2 seasons. So like, if Wagner isn't a good 3-point shooter this year, which he wasn't as freshman, I'd imagine it'll get better in year 2, but how much better? And if, I don't know, I guess like the freshman coming off the bench with Boogie Fland, or if Carter Knox ends up starting or whatever, like if those guys are freshmen and they're shooting in the high 20s, low 30s from 3, which happens with a lot of talented freshmen, where's the 3-point offense coming outside of one guy? So they do have bucket getters. They have some good size down low. I think they're going to be a good team for sure. And it's going to be an insanely tough environment. That is one of the low key and most underrated, toughest places to play is at Arkansas. I don't know how the exhibition is going to affect that in terms of will there be, a ton of KU fans, and obviously it's close enough travel and everything. If this was a neutral court game, I think Kansas is probably favored by 5 or 6. If it's in Allen Fieldhouse, maybe it's 7 or 8. But the fact that it is in Arkansas makes this more of a coin flip game. So I think it'll be a really fun game. And as far as the importance of it, I mean, the most important part is it is for charity if we're looking at this like realistically big picture. But it is one of those things where even though it doesn't matter, ding the bell, I've said it like 5 times this segment, but if you lose, people immediately start questioning just how good you are before the season even started. Like we saw that last year. You lost to Illinois in that exhibition. Even though it didn't really matter, you already had people starting to be like, well, we sure they're the number 1 team in the country? Like, don't have any doubt this early on in the season, And there are so many years where secret scrimmage results don't end up showing who the true better team is. The most important part out of all this really is finding your guys, finding your rotation, finding or sorting out your best lineups, who plays best with each other, position battles, trying to figure out who's going to perform well in that moment, getting more comfortable playing together. Those are the most important parts of all this. But yeah, if you're going to play the game, might as well win. All right, let's get on to our biggest matchups of the game. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Our episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You can get in on KU to win the Big 12 at over 2-1 odds, or make the Final Four at over 2-1 odds, or Hunter Dickinson to win National Player of the Year, the Wooden Award at plus 550, or get in on the World Series action, the college football, NFL action. I mean, October, November, prime time for sports. NBA started this week. You can get in on all that with FanDuel. FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Continuing on with this episode of the show, and thank you for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Don't forget you can check out Locked On College Basketball, Locked On College Football. Those guys all do a great job for your second listen every day. All right, our 3 matchups to watch here. Number 1, KU versus John L. Davis and DJ Wagner, ball screens. What's the lasting memory of KU's final game of last season? It's getting ball screened to death against Gonzaga and getting run away there. Well, Arkansas might be playing 2, I guess really 3 bigs, depending how you view like Adu Thiero. That could really help KU defensively in this game, right? If they're going to play big, my biggest questions about the KU defense are more so about how you defend teams who can pace and space you from 3 and stretch the basketball out and stretch it from different positions and all this sort of things. I don't know if Arkansas is going to take advantage of that to the most, but what happens if DJ Wagner is, a much improved shooter and he's shooting 36% this year, and what you have in Davis, and Brazile and Thiero are both letting it fly and are at least efficient 3-point shooters. Then all of a sudden the lineup changes to being like, you have 4 shooters on the floor at all times, right? But specifically with Davis and Wagner, both those guys I think can operate well in those ball screens. I've seen Davis do it so much from his time back at Florida Atlantic. DeJuan Harris put the clamps on Davis at least enough. What level of DJ Wagner are you going to get? But if those were weaknesses or questions for KU last year, you probably haven't had a ton of time to work on how you want to defend ball screens, or totally picked how you want to deal with that if you're Bill Self for the defense. So, that'll be very interesting with how they go about it against 2 guys who should have the potential to hurt you on them that Arkansas has in the backcourt. Number 2 is the KU rebounding. So Adu Thiero crashes the glass hard. He's an athletic big man / wing, depending on how you want to view him. If they're playing 2 bigs, which I have a hard time imagining they're not going to, like for big chunks of minutes based on the personnel, They're going to have rebounding here and there. And clearly they have size. Clearly they have athleticism, right? Based on the players they have, based on just, I don't know, preconceived notions of what types of teams John Calipari has. Like, that's going to challenge you on the glass. So for KU, I don't have many questions about defensive rebounding, actually. In Big 12 only games last season, did you know Kansas was number 1 in defensive rebounding rate in the conference? Yeah, they were. But that doesn't mean it'll be easy in this matchup because they're still going to crash the offensive glass. But beyond that, unfortunately, even though KU was number 1 in offensive rebounding rate in Big 12 only games, they were just 14th of 14 teams in offensive rebounding rate. So they were a good defensive rebounding team. They're a bad offensive rebounding team. The best defensive rebounding team in the conference, the worst offensive rebounding team in the conference. There's no excuse not to be better this year. You have some athletes, again, repeating what I say all the time, like defensive rebounding, it's about positioning, it's about size, it's about boxing guys out. Offensive rebounding, it's about hustle, it's about athleticism, it's about springiness, verticality, right? And your want to. KU has some springy wings and athletes that can get them some offensive rebounds. So like Hunter Dickinson will take care of the defensive rebounds for the most part, right? You need somebody to help you out on that offensive end of the glass. And can you do it against a team who is big and has some athletes in Arkansas? Number 3, KU from behind the arc. It wasn't really a great 3-point shooting game. There were here and there that they made some in late night in the fog scrimmage, but it wasn't a dazzling display of 3-point volume for KU. And this isn't everything as well. Like if you have a poor shooting game in this one again, it's like, okay, it's an exhibition. Like, let's see the bigger sample size. And to reverse it, like if you remember the first 2 games of last season, like KU was shooting like 50% from 3, and that didn't bear out over the course of the season. So you can't take stuff too small in these sample sizes. But, Kentucky with Coach Cal last season was 284th in the country in preventing field goal attempts that came from behind the arc. So basically they were allowing a lot of 3-point shots. Now, was that just specific to that team? Maybe. But enter a reconfigured KU shooting game. And this is absolutely something that fans are hoping clicks for KU to show that it's there after last year's struggles, right? A good game in an exhibition from 3 doesn't, mean people are going to be storming mass going, oh, well, 3-point shooting's fixed. 1 game, that's enough for me. No, obviously, but rather have it than not. You'd rather send it in the right direction. You'd rather show that, all the player personnel that you brought in, it's clicking, that it is working, that you're not getting Nick Timberlake where you have this guy who you thought was going to be a good 3-point shooter and it just didn't work out. So I think from that standpoint, I look at this and I say, if you're Kansas, go have a good 3-point shooting game on the road against an Arkansas team who, will have some athleticism and length, but maybe isn't going to be, I don't know, I guess the quickest team if they're playing 2 bigs on the outside, right? Like if they're playing Brazil, how much can KU take advantage of that? Because if you're going to be playing KJ Adams versus, is this a good game to experiment, with some of those small ball lineups or AJ Storrs at the 4? And now he can get off some more 3s if that's kind of the situation. So it'd be good, like I said, shoot some 3s, get them up more, show that that's a big improved thing for KU. All right, who are some players to watch? This is Locked On Jayhawks. Our episode today is brought to you by Prize Picks, which is the best place to get real money on sports, to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded prizes, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I love the interface with everything. They make it super easy to see. And there is, for somebody like me, likes to customize, likes to look at a bunch of different options, you can do just that. I mean, I'm talking, you can go in on NFL mixed with NBA, and especially right now in this time of the calendar, the sports year, you're going to be watching different sports. You're going to be ping-ponging your head around different TV screens. Why not have some fun with some of the action? And if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to a big payout like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So if you think that Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week, or that, Christian McCaffrey can come back healthy and run for, say, more than 75.5 yards, cook up your own hot takes with your friends. Win real money this football season, basketball season, hockey season, whatever it is, when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today, code LOCKEDONCollege, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is Prize Picks with code LOCKEDONCollege. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, finishing things up on this episode of the show, players to watch in this one. So let's start with this. I think the player matchup of the game, it's DeJuan Harris versus John L. Davis. John L. Davis, All-American candidate, transfer from Florida Atlantic. Really good scorer, can do it in a lot of ways. 41% from three, 48% from the floor. He's so calm, 6'3", has good size. He can drive, he can finish in the mid-range. Does a little bit of everything. Good rebounder as well. He's a really good player. With DeJuan Harris possibly playing less minutes, can he be a better defender? Can he be more like the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year from 2 years ago? And if he does, what does that look like on John L. Davis? So that's what I'm very interested to see in this game. But also I think it's a very pertinent matchup there because I think John L. Davis is Arkansas's best player. And if you can slow him down, that would go a long way to KU winning this game. Now, as far as Hawks to soar, if Hunter Dickinson ends up being good to go and, plays a full load and looks like the normal guy coming off that injury late night in the fog, I think it's good to bring up. He does well in these kind of big on big matchups. And even though Jonas Aidoo is a fantastic defender who comes from Tennessee at that center position, these two met in that third place game of the Maui Invitational last year. And you know what Hunter Dickinson did? I mean, it wasn't all on Jonas Aidoo, but a lot of it was. Hunter Dickinson had 17 points and 20 rebounds. So I think Hunter Dickinson would be a good pick for the Hawk to soar in this one should he play. But I'll be really interested to see what Flory Badunga can do against a big front line as well. Can he provide, some spark for you? And then when you look at it, like if they end up playing big basketball where it's like Fierro at the 3, Brazil at the 4, Aidoo or Avicic at the 5, I think that would possibly be a good matchup for like whoever is KU's wing at that time, whether it's Rylan Griffin or AJ Storr, to possibly get some like 3-point shots off and stuff. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. We will be talking KU K-State. That'll be on tomorrow's show for the Sunflower Showdown preview. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that one. And we'll be back to recap whatever happens with this game, with the KU K-State game, all throughout the weekend as well. See you next time.